Welcome back, everyone, to DerekJ Speaks, and today we are talking about the huge blockbuster news that broke this morning, July 31st, 2021, Saturday. Huge news coming from WWE, a new release. They just had a huge round of releases earlier this year, and we have one single release on this particular day. The news broke this morning and has sent the whole wrestling world in a whirlwind, basically. WWE announced the release of Bray Wyatt. Yes, that Bray Wyatt. Real name Windham Rotunda, also known as The Fiend, Husky Harris, a man of, I'm sure, several nicknames over the years. But yes, that Bray Wyatt was released from WWE. They announced it earlier, of course, giving the usual "we wish him well in his future endeavors" tagline. So, a lot to dig in, a lot to dive into, a lot to go on and on about this particular individual, Bray Wyatt, and how this move is shocking, but at the same time, it's not. I think deep down, most of us would have expected this at some point. This is not something like, oh, well, I never would have seen this coming. No, well, especially considering the last 2 years of WWE releases during this whole pandemic, there are really no releases that are overly shocking anymore. But this one in particular, it is shocking, but also not. Because this is a guy who has been with this company for several years. He was in developmental for many, many years. He was on the main roster. He's been on the main roster since 2013. He was originally on the main roster in 2011 as Husky Harris, coming off of that particular season of NXT back when they had seasons, and he was a part of the New Nexus. He was on TV very briefly, and they took him off. They sent him back down to developmental, FCW, which later turned into NXT. That's where he formed the Eater of Worlds character, and that eventually came up to the main roster in 2013. So since 2013, some way, some shape or form, Bray Wyatt has been a main focal presence on WWE television for the last couple of years. So to that extent, to that degree, it is pretty shocking and unbelievable that he would be released. But at the same time, we realize and understand how he has been treated since 2013, since coming up to the main roster all the way up until now. It is not shocking that they would just throw their hands up and give up and finally let him go. Now, according to several different wrestling news outlets, The Observer, Fightful Select, and several others that I came across, they cited the reason of budget cuts, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? How it's budget, your guess is as good as mine as to how they are continuing to cut budget and budget costs and use that as a reason to justify these releases. It's amazing. You know, we've had shocking releases in the past few months, in the past year or so. We just saw Braun Strowman, Aleister Black. There's been several. But this is one that I think has stuck with a lot of people, and I've seen it on my Twitter all day, just how strongly opinionated people are about this, because they, like myself, have watched WWE since July 2013, when the Wyatt family originally debuted, and they have watched every single month, every single year up till now, and they know how this man has been treated. And you don't need to be on the internet. You don't need to be a part of the IWC as outdated of a term as that is. You don't need to read the Meltzers or the Fightfuls or Sean Ross Sapp. You don't need to read the dirt sheets to know how poorly treated Bray Wyatt has been and how mishandled he has been. All you have to do is watch the show. That's all you have to do. Now, mistreated. Can you say he's been completely mistreated? It's not like they insult his weight. They don't, I'm sure he's been treated well to a certain degree. They have listened to a few of his ideas. It's because of this company that he met his now wife and mother of his children. So it's not safe to say that he's been completely mistreated. I'm sure he has a lot to be grateful for that this company has given him. They've given him a platform to express himself and show his creativity to the entire world. But at the same time, this is a guy who should have been a much bigger star than he was. There's many people you can say that about, but in this case, Bray Wyatt is specifically someone who should have been a much bigger main event star than he really was. Is he the greatest wrestler in the world? No. On top of my head, probably my favorite singles match that I've seen him in was the match against Daniel Bryan at the Royal Rumble in 2014. 2014 is now 2021. So that was many years ago that match happened. And since then, there has not been a match that I have seen him in that has come close to topping that one. So wrestling, the actual performance of wrestling in the ring, okay, he hasn't put out a bunch of bangers, but some people can transcend that. I don't look at Bray Wyatt and think, wow, he's a great wrestler, or wow, he's an awful wrestler, or anything like that. It's mainly about character with him, which in some ways is a lost art in terms of pro wrestling these days, but the attention to detail with your character, how you present your character. And Bray Wyatt is someone who had a very unique character. He had two of them. The Eater of Worlds, the cult leader, psychedelic hippie, backwoods country cult leader of the Wyatt family, later on to this twisted mind, fake Mr. Rogers, split personality, demon from hell type thing with The Fiend. Both very unique characters that were completely bungled. You see, the thing with Bray Wyatt, and I'm sure you can hear a lot of people say the exact same thing that I'm going to tell you, but what it comes down to is you have a company in WWE, you have someone in Vince McMahon, and you have these writers who just did not know what to do with this guy. They didn't know how to write for him. They didn't know how to present him. They didn't know how to put him in feuds. They did not know what to do with him. They did not know what they had. They did not understand what they had with this guy. A lot of people say that the problems for Bray Wyatt started all the way back in 2014 when he lost that match to John Cena at WrestleMania 30. And you know what? Yeah. Should he have won that match? Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. But it's not even the fact that he lost. It's that what did you do with him as a result of that loss? And you are fooling yourself if you say or you claim that the follow-up to that loss was beneficial for him. He looked strong in defeat and he looked strong going forward after that defeat. No, he didn't. He went on to beat John Cena the next month. Why? Because some creepy little kid sang in front of John Cena's face and spooked him so badly that Bray Wyatt was able to walk out of the steel cage and win. And then they had a third match, which was a last man standing match that Bray Wyatt lost. He then feuded with Chris Jericho. He won that, but what did it all amount to? They eventually broke up the Wyatt family extremely prematurely. Bray Wyatt goes on to WrestleMania. He loses to The Undertaker. He goes in a feud with Roman Reigns. He loses that. He eventually regains the Wyatt family and reforms it only for them to lose again. He goes to WrestleMania the following year, and then he gets beaten up by The Rock and John Cena. This pattern goes over and over and over again. He lost all credibility. He loses credibility when you continue to beat him. This is a man who has been pinned several times unnecessarily. There's compilation videos out there of Bray Wyatt. He's cutting these spooky promos. He did like these very well-spoken, very thought-provoking promos, sounding very intimidating, sounding very scary almost. And then you cut to see what happened in the match, and he ended up losing. Whether it's him getting dumped out of the Rumble by the Big Show, or getting pinned by Roman Reigns, or getting pinned by this person or that person, or losing over and over again. Losing when it mattered the most. That is where the frustration comes in. That is where the lack of credibility comes in. That is where you as an audience member are watching this show and you're not reading the dirt sheets. You're not looking at the behind the scenes aspect of it at all. You're just watching the show on face value. And on this face value, you're seeing this guy and he's a loser. But they still tried. They still tried to come up with creative aspects of the character. They paired him off in a tag team with Matt Hardy for a while. And then that dropped. There was a lot of different directions they could have gone in with that, but nothing. And then they bring him back as The Fiend. Y'all remember those few weeks in 2019 of Monday Night Raw where the best thing about it were those Firefly Funhouse segments every single week, and this cheerful, happy persona that was being portrayed in the Funhouse with all the puppets and even the kids sometimes, and this very eerie, creepy undertone to all of it. It was very unique. It was very entertaining. Then we finally saw the appearance of The Fiend. I still, to this day, will go back every now and then and rewatch that match at SummerSlam 2019 with Bray Wyatt and Finn Balor, where we first saw the entrance of The Fiend, where we first saw him come out. And it was badass. It was cool. And then, of course, people were joking at the time, how long is it going to take for them to mess this up? Well, it didn't take that long. Because not long after that, they put him directly into a feud with Seth Rollins for the Universal Championship. Where, I don't care what anybody says, I do not think for a second they had any intention of putting that championship on Bray Wyatt. They just wanted him to be in that spot, but they had no intention of putting the championship on him, which begs the question, why put him in a championship feud? That was a character that didn't need to be champion, but because he was so new, if you're going to immediately thrust him in the championship picture, he better damn well win it. And then what happened? We all saw Hell in a Cell 2019. That main event, the match was atrocious. The finish was even worse. So, again, another example of them not knowing how to handle this character. But it wasn't done for him yet. He eventually did win the championship. It was a few weeks later in Saudi Arabia. And then he went on to have a few good matches with Daniel Bryan. But then what happened right before WrestleMania? A few spears and barely a jackhammer from Goldberg in Saudi Arabia, and The Fiend loses his championship. A dumb decision then, a dumb decision to this day. Too many examples of them not truly knowing what they had with this guy, what they had with this person. And I'm not claiming to be the biggest Bray Wyatt fan in the world, because I'm not. I like him. I like Bray Wyatt. I've liked what I have seen from his character. I have liked the way he has been portrayed. I like his promos. I admire the creativity that goes on through his mind that can sometimes reflect itself and play out on television. But it is frustrating. It's frustrating when you see this guy get pushed, when you see this guy be put on television, and you see him be put in these high profile feuds and these high profile storylines, and he gets this significant amount of television time every single week, only for you to get to the big points, the big matches, and see him lose every single time, or at least more times than he wins. It's hard to get behind them. It's hard to care. That's why as the year went on in 2020, it was very difficult to care about anything that they were doing with The Fiend. He won the Universal Championship back from Braun Strowman, then immediately lost it a week later to Roman Reigns. He gets switched over to Raw. He gets in a feud with Randy Orton that results in him getting burnt alive and being gone from television for months. He's brought back. By this point, he has Alexa Bliss with him, so he has someone joining the act to add a little bit of a new element to it. Gets to WrestleMania, and then he loses to Randy Orton because Alexa Bliss had weird goo running down her face. Then an RKO and 1, 2, 3, and that's over. And that's the last we'll ever see of The Fiend. In fact, Randy Orton cut a promo on television a few weeks later saying that you have seen the last of The Fiend. Turns out he was absolutely 100% correct. I just don't get it. I really don't. And it's frustrating as a fan. It's frustrating to follow along. It's frustrating when you see someone who gets it, who loves this business, who he's a second, third generation superstar. So of course he loves this business. And I don't want to say that WWE went out of their way to mishandle this guy, but look at the situation that's in front of us right now. This is a guy who they invested a heavy amount of television time into, then they took him off TV. They paired him up with this other person in Alexa Bliss, only to take him out of the equation and put all the focus on this other person. And then they fire him. It's not a good look. Where specifically did they go wrong with Bray Wyatt? I don't know. I don't have that answer. But I do know that from the very beginning, there were hope spots. They put the WWE Championship on him. They gave him 2 Universal Championships. They put him in feuds and matches with the likes of John Cena and The Undertaker and Roman Reigns. They had him interact with The Rock. There's been a lot of big moments for Bray Wyatt. Seth Rollins, Daniel Bryan, Goldberg. He's been in some significant roles in the company over the last few years, but man, it is hard to think about anything overly positive that he was involved in. I apologize if this comes off as rambling, but I'm just kind of freeforming my thoughts here about this. So what's next for him? Is he going to go to AEW? Is he going to go somewhere else? He might. Apparently his 90 days are up, and the end of his 90 days falls directly on Halloween, October 31st, and that is a Sunday. Could AEW be running a pay-per-view that day? Potentially. I was under the impression that they were going to start running Saturday shows again, so it's very likely not going to happen that way. But I could see him going to AEW and thriving there. Is that going to add to the whole notion of AEW signing all these ex-WWE guys and, oh, they're just doing this and that? It doesn't matter if they're an ex-WWE superstar or not. If they have something to contribute to your roster and to your television show, you sign them. That's why you sign someone like Andrade. That's why you sign someone like Aleister Black, rechristened Malachi Black. That's why you go after the likes of CM Punk or Bryan Danielson, like all roads are pointing at them doing. It doesn't matter where they're coming from. What can they do for you? Can they add depth to your roster? Can they add a new flavor to your roster? And Bray Wyatt is someone who I believe can do that. But the choice is up to him. as to where he wants to go, but he has the freedom to do and go wherever he wants now. He is not chained to the confines of WWE. He is not limited. There is no ceiling. Sky is the limit for this guy and his creative mind. Hell, if he wanted to go into the movies, in the movie business and do anything, the dude is that creative. I have every bit of confidence in him to succeed at whatever it is he wants to do in life. But it is a damn shame that WWE had someone like him, had a character like him, and could never fully invest in it, and could never fully get behind it, and could never really understand what to do with it. All I hope is going forward, they have a better idea of the characters that are presented to them and the characters they come up with and the talent that they are working with. And whatever Bray Wyatt's next venture is, whatever his next journey is, they can see that and they can feel ashamed of themselves. They can feel embarrassed, and it can be a kick in the ass for them to know, man, we had that all along. We had that all along, and we just did not know what to do with it. And now we know to never make that mistake ever again. I'm optimistic that that can happen, but will it? I don't know. Probably not. But that's about it for me. I just wanted to get on here real quick and talk about this because Twitter and all of that was just not enough to restrict my words and thoughts. So it might have been a little scatterbrained all over the place, but I thank you so much for listening. I know there are several people who are talking about this exact situation right now as we speak, and to stop and listen to me and chat along with me for a little bit, I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you who listen to all of these videos, who come to this channel and hear my thoughts. I'm a pro wrestling fan. This has been a major part of my life for several years now. I love it. I can get angry about it, but I am passionate about pro wrestling. I am passionate about this business, and certain things and certain topics come to mind and I want to discuss them. And I am just very thankful for all of you for wanting to listen. So my best wishes go out to Bray Wyatt, and my best wishes go out to all of you. Have an amazing day, have an amazing week, and take care.